the top of Mount Everest. I did not summit Mount Everest, but I went to it, and I went to the place where all expeditions for Everest start. So it's the place where Hillary and Tenzing Norgay camped out, and where people are camped out literally right now, getting ready to go climb Mount Everest. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. So Rob is 26 at the time. I was 68 at the time. He said, "You want to go do the trek to Everest Base Camp?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I do." And then about an hour later, I thought, what did I just commit to? And then I realized I better get to work. So I started training. Let me pause for 1 second. I should mention, the show's organized in sections. Training and preparation, Kathmandu, the city, which in itself is fascinating, the trek itself, and then where we slept, what we ate, people we met, animals we met, because animals are extremely important to anything to do with this terrain. And then what I call the escape. We had a little kerfuffle at the end and had to make a quick getaway. But I think most, if not all, of your questions will be answered as I go through. But if you have a question, just ask. Stick your hand up and we'll take a quick break. And I'm going to show you some other big mountains in addition. And I'll explain this photograph to you in a little bit. But that is Mount Everest. And that is not colorized or anything. This is an actual composite picture. That's Mount Everest with the sun on it. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. So I started training. First thing I did was I went to the gym. And then I realized I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm training for. I don't think I need to lift a lot of weights. You know, I don't need muscle strength or upper body strength and all. So I hired a trainer, represented by that little billy goat there, a woman who works with my son out in California. And she specializes in training people for high altitude endurance events, which this was obviously going to be. What are you doing back there? I spent a ton of time in Lincoln Parish Park carrying that pack you see to the left of it there. I started out with 10 pounds, ended up with 25 pounds, and I'd go up and down every piece of hill I could find in Lincoln Parish Park, because that's about the only elevation you can get around here. I went to Rock Island Physical Therapy. I rode both of those bikes on the right-hand side many, many, many miles. You can see in the middle I listed some mountains. I started out with Driscoll Mountain, got all the 535 feet I could get there. Then I did 2 big mountains in California and 2 big mountains in Colorado with my son. We needed to find out if I had altitude issues. Could I go up to 14, 15, 16, 17,000 feet and not pass out? I had 4 doctors who helped me in this process. That's Shane Phillips, Troy Ketchum, who was my physical therapist, David Tretton, who did knee surgery on me 8 weeks before I left, and Nav Sharma, who helped me with all sorts of aches and pains and pain management. And then lastly, that funny little picture of a bed you see there with a mini tent on it, that's called a hypoxico tent. I slept for 28 nights in a tent that covers half your body, and every night you crank the oxygen down a little bit. So by the time I got to Nepal, I was acclimatized to 17,000 feet, just about 17,000 feet. So that made a massive difference for me. You know, a lot of people here go out to Colorado or somewhere out in the West, and you get there and you're like, wow, 5,000, 6,000 feet of elevation is a big difference. I didn't want to have that experience. One of the things I learned about getting ready for this is, if you're going to do something like this, put in the time, put in the effort, train hard, and go enjoy yourself instead of feeling terrible and not being ready for what you're doing. Yes.
How long did you train?
About a year. About a year. Pretty steady. I worked at it pretty hard. Wouldn't you agree, honey? So that's what I put in to try to get ready to go. So off we went. Yes.
Do all the climbers sleep in those tents?
No, it's actually a no, and I did this in my home here in Ruston. My son's company is pioneering an approach to big mountains called rapid ascent, and it involves being pre-acclimatized. And they do it because, one, it works and it makes it much easier for everybody. You can also cut the duration of an expedition. Everest is generally from where we were, where you'll see in base camp. You can see Mount Everest, but to get to the top takes 2 more months because you can't just zip up there. You've got to be acclimatized all along the way. Once you get above about 20,000 feet, we're really not supposed to be up there hanging out for long periods of time. When you get up above 26,000, that's called the death zone because there's no oxygen up there pretty much. Where we went, the oxygen is half of what it is here. Well, that's why people wear oxygen. Yeah, this is my show, not yours. So. But Rob's company is pioneering this rapid ascent program, and it's becoming quite popular. So it does 2 things. 1, it gets you in better shape earlier. 2, it minimizes your time on the mountain. And what people don't think about this is every hour on the mountain is risk and danger. This is not a place to be fooling around. So if you can make something a week duration instead of 2 weeks, you're cutting out a week of risk and danger. So being pre-acclimatized makes a lot of sense. So off we went to Kathmandu, and that is literally the picture from the back seat in the plane in front of me of us coming into Kathmandu. And we've all heard the song, you know, I'm going to Kathmandu, and it's sort of an exotic, intriguing place. That's what Kathmandu looks like. It is intense. It's like New York City intensity, people, animals, vehicles of every kind, all the time moving everywhere. And the streets don't have lanes. It's a little bit of everybody for themselves. And literally, we got there, my crew was my son and three of his friends and myself. Rob has been there before. So we got out of our hotel and we're like, how do you even cross the street here? And Rob says, oh, you just do this. And he strolls out in the middle of the street and puts his arms out. And by God, they all stopped. It was amazing. And then you cross the street and then zoom, it takes back off. But that is a typical street scene in Kathmandu, whether it's 6 in the morning, 6 at night, midnight, whatever. It's just nonstop. People and animals and vehicles and everything. Very, very intense place. Our guide for the day, we spent 2 days in Kathmandu. Our guide for the first day took us to, Kathmandu is the home of the Hindu and Buddhist religions. If you're a Hindu or a Buddhist, you, in theory, will go to be buried when you pass away. Your last rites will be held in Kathmandu. The first place we went to, the 2 pictures here, is the Buddhist temple. Pardon me, I get that mixed up every time. It's the Hindu temple. Hindu is very modest, frugal, nothing fancy. That temple you can see on the far side there, that is their main temple. That is the main temple for the Hindu religion worldwide. In the smaller picture, those are funeral pyres. Those are actually racks of wood upon which your body will be placed. You'll be burned to ashes, and then the ashes go right in that river right there. And that's how you end your life as a Hindu. The Buddhists are a little bit more ornate. This is the main Buddhist temple, which was unbelievable. Just gold gilt everywhere, people dressed in finery, just a physically massive landscape. We were there during a high holiday, so we saw some pretty neat things. This is just a different glimpse, but I just thought that gold plaque was kind of amazing. And the 2 eyes on that temple peak there are symbols of Buddhism. And if you're a true Buddhist, you learn how to meditate with your eyes open. So that's a symbol you see all over Buddhism around the world. And it's when you've achieved the highest level of Buddhism because you can meditate with your eyes open. We got to go inside some of the temples. This ornate statue on the right was just a beautiful, beautiful piece of art. And then all the jewelry on it is put there by people who come and donate. I guess it's a sacrifice or a charitable donation. And, you know, I mean, there, you can see some of those strings of pearls are pretty significant. But it was just fascinating to get to see. And then when we came outside the temple, this family had just gone in to do their worship. We could not go into this temple because it was a high holy day. But the whole family was there, and you can see they're dressed in beautiful colored clothes. And they have in front of them food and herbs that they're burning as a sacrifice, and the two go together. So we got to see some pretty cool things about the local culture. Then, the next day, we were off to Lukla, which is not the highest airport in the world. The highest airport in the world is in Ecuador, but this is the most dangerous airport in the world. And I'll show you why in a second, but that's the picture out of my window from the plane at about 6 o'clock in the morning. On the left, you'll see, I guess that's left, is that right? Yeah, I'm opposite. On the right, those red bags are our porter bags. We had porters who helped us carry our gear. And they are porters, not Sherpas. A lot of people think that a Sherpa is a person who carries things. A Sherpa is actually an ethnicity. If you are a Sherpa, your last name is Sherpa. And if your last name isn't Sherpa, you're not a Sherpa. But you can be a porter, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go along. But we had a guide and 3 porters who carried our bags. We each carried about a 25-pound pack every day. These guys carried the rest of it. And I'll talk more about them, but just amazing people. We were in, you know, hiking boots and all this. They're in sneakers, flip-flops, Crocs, some of them barefoot. Extreme cold doesn't bother them. Extreme heat doesn't bother them. I'll show you some pictures of the loads these people can carry. It's insane. A licensed Sherpa is licensed to carry up to 500 pounds on their back, and they can. Just superhuman people. But that's the local airport. That's what the weather is like there a lot. It generally gets sucked in every afternoon, so you fly in the morning. You're probably going to fly out in the morning. But that runway is about 700 feet long. Only the largest planes that go in there are about 18 passengers, and it's like this. So they land, they put the tail down, and then drop the front, and then come to a halt quite quickly. And when you're going out, you take off from there, and it's about a 3,000-foot drop off the end of that runway. So you better be airborne by the time you get there. But that's where we spent the first night. Forgive me, we didn't spend a night there. We got off the plane, loaded up our stuff, and got going. On the way back, we spent a little time there, so I'll come back to that. But this was Lukla, most dangerous airport in the world. The Nepali people are extremely proud of their pilots, and now having been there, I understand why. These guys can fly anywhere through anything. But off we went, and I titled this little section, Feeling Humble and Small, because that is how I felt. The landscape is grand, it's massive. You hear people having experiences where you realize you're just a little speck on the earth. Well, I had that feeling here. But a fascinating place. So this is a shot of a fairly typical section of the trail when we started out. It's roughly paved, but you can see we're headed slightly downhill here. The Nepalis joke about, oh, in just a little while there'll be some Nepali flatland, because everybody's like, when are we going to get a break? That's a joke. There is no flatland. Nepal is ridge after ridge after ridge. To go anywhere, you go up and then you go down. And remarkably sturdy and remarkably strong. They will sway considerably when you get out in the middle. And I'll show you another one in just a minute. But that's just a fairly typical shot. Then the second day, this is the actual entrance to Everest National Park. I didn't realize it's technically a national park with a gate that you go through to enter it. And we're on the south side here, on the Nepali side. So this is, they call the park Sagarmatha, S-A-G-A-R-M-A-T-H-A. That is Everest's actual original name. And you can see we weren't alone. We had lots of other people, but we had to check in here and we had to show our permits. Everybody had to show their permit that we had a permit to get in, and then we get checked along the way to make sure nobody gets lost. Probably a good thing. And then the second picture on your left, my right. Your right, my left. That's my guys. That's Jacob Kennedy, Jack Smithy, who's from here in Ruston, and Woody Smithy's son, who was my son Robert's best friend, Robert, and then one of my son Jake's buddies from college. And behind us, you can see there's a suspension bridge. That is the highest, longest suspension bridge in the Khumbu region and on this particular trek. And I'll show you some more pictures of that right now. There's my crew coming off it. As you can see, it's quite long and it's quite high. And when you're in the middle of it, it's swaying about 4 or 5 feet like this. It's a lot of people don't like it, but it was cool. One of the things you can see from the other picture that you have to appreciate is there's one trail. That's all there is. So animals and humans all use the same trail, and the animals have the right of way. Not because they've earned it or they're smarter or whatever, because they'll walk over you if you get in their way. They don't care about things like that. But like all animals, they also do whatever they have to do wherever they are. So the bridges are not exactly clean necessarily. So you got to really watch your footing everywhere you go. You don't want to fall down. Yes?
Do you have rope to hold on to?
You can. It's hard to see in the picture of the crew there, but all those colored bandanas, those are wrapped on about a 2-inch steel cable. So yes, you do. You actually have you have rope. It's a steel cable to hold on to all the way across, but you have to be careful because there's wires wrapped around it that will cut you. And you can see my friend Jacob is holding his trekking poles in his hand. You do not use your poles on the bridges because about 9 times out of 10, apparently, they get stuck and snapped off, and then you don't have your poles, or they get stuck and make you fall down, which you don't want to do. But yes, you do have on these bridges. I'll show you one that didn't have one on one side. So this was an incredibly difficult day. We thought once we got to this side of the bridge, everything was going to be great. From there, we hiked uphill at about 40 degrees without a break for about 5 hours. It was a very long day.
Do the animals evolve at crossing the bridge?
No, they just do whatever they want to do. And the rule is, if you, they have bells on so you know they're coming. If you hear bells, the rule is hug the mountain. Don't get on the outside because they'll knock you off. They don't know any better. So when the animals are approaching, hug the mountain. So after a long, long day, we came into this town. This is called Namche Bazaar, which is the largest town in the Hindu, or in the Khumbu, rather. This town, as you can see, it's about 4,000 people. There's a school on the left there. Oh, thank you very much. What's he giving me? Good stuff. There's Namche. You have to keep in mind, this is 2 full days, arduous hike from the airport, and 4,000 people live there year-round. They have a school, and everything you see, and I'm going to show you another picture in a minute, everything you see there was brought in on the back of an animal. Some things come in by helicopter, but not many because it's so expensive. So whether it's roof tiles, windows, we saw a guy carrying a Honda generator on his back. Everything that's there was carried there by an animal of some sort, sometimes a human. This is a closer view, and we got here and we were exhausted. That's my guide with his hand up telling us we're here. And we were like, oh, we're so relieved. Well, it turns out that where we were staying was all the way at the top. We had another mile to go. And it wasn't a mile like this. It was another mile of uphill. It was very tough. But that just blew my mind. I didn't expect to see anything like this in the middle of the Khumbu. So anyway, we went up and stayed, and I'm going to bring you back here a little bit later. But this is starting to get exciting now because the next day we will get our first glimpse of Everest. And they have in the schedule, it's called a rest day. It has nothing to do with rest. A rest day means you're still going to hike a long distance, and you're going to go higher than you've been before so you can acclimatize, but you get to do it without your pack. So that's why it's called a rest day. Complete misnomer. Next day we headed out and we got our first glimpse of Everest, which technically is behind the highest cloud you can see there. I'm going to show you another view of it in a minute. But this was, for me, who has been looking at this mountain in books and magazines since I was 7 years old and been intrigued with it that entire time. This was a big moment. It was very powerful and emotional to actually be there and see this grand mountain. And the mountain to the side there that is closer to us, that's Ama Dablam, and you're going to see some more cool pictures of that one. But that was our first glimpse of the mountain, which was fascinating. Excuse me. And then I realized, we got a long way to go. That's a long, long way away. Off we went the next day, and this is a typical village we ran into. So we were not carrying tents or cooking gear or anything. We stayed in a little village every night, and we slept in tea houses. And I'll show you what those are like in a minute. But this is just a village perched in a flat spot on the top of another mountain. Happens to be home to the oldest and most important Buddhist temple in all of the Khumbu. And that is the entrance to it. And we got to go in there, and it was really very mystical and ethereal because it was foggy, and this is this highly revered place. You have to take off your shoes to go in and all. You can't talk, no pictures, nothing. But it was fascinating, and we got to go in. I thought I had another picture in here of that, but maybe further on. But here we are. Now we're 3.5 days hike from the airport, and we come across this. And again, everything there carried in on the back of an animal. That night, it snowed, and I went to sleep. That's the night I called you. I was 3 days in. I had knee surgery 7 weeks before. Now it's snowing, and I am way on the other side of the earth thinking, what am I doing here? And I'm going to have to hike through a snowstorm, and I was worried about hurting my knee. Fortunately, I woke up about 4, and the snow had stopped. So I thought, that's great. I went back to sleep. I woke up at 6, and there was twice as much snow as there had been. So this was, whoops, I went too far. This was the next morning. And that bridge, you were asking the question earlier, on my left, there's no handrail. And that river, it's about a 150-foot drop down to that river. So you better believe you're hanging on the right-hand side. But coming through the woods, it was actually gorgeous. It was like walking through a snow tunnel. So while it made it a little difficult, it was really pretty. Excuse me. Later that day, we ended up, the sun came out, it was absolutely spectacular, and we ended up at this location, and that mountain behind us is Ama Dablam, which some people call the most beautiful mountain in the world. It is spectacular. And we're all excited because now we have another rest day. Well, again, we shed our packs, had a little bite to eat, and off we went to go up about 3,000 feet of elevation gain from where we were. But you want to go up and get that exposure, and you come back down. It's called climb high, sleep low, but that's how you acclimatize. So here we go. And you can see this is pretty darn steep. That's me with my back to you, and the person in front of me who looks like they're throwing up, because they are, is Jack Smithy. And Jack is an incredible athlete. He played high school football at Ruston, he played at Tech. He can do most anything, but he had on too many clothes, and he wasn't drinking enough water, and all of a sudden he was dehydrated and got sick. And we got him up and down, but we weren't sure. We thought we might have to leave Jack. But that's just a little perspective of what an easy day is like. Then we got up there, and this was the backdrop we had. And again, that's Ama de Blanc right there. Pretty spectacular and humbling. And I will show you this next little video here. This is when we, after we've struggled with our heads down, we turned around, and this is what we had. Do you have a Kleenex by chance? A tissue? This is just as far as you can see. And that's China, right straight through there. This is where I had that first feeling of being nothing but a little speck of dust on the earth. Thank you very much. Just way bigger than anything I've ever been around. You know, the mountains are twice as high as our tallest. Probably right around freezing, around 32. Some mornings when we woke up, it was below zero. I think one day got up to about 40. But very pleasant, even when it was cold, because you're moving, you know. I'm sorry?
What month of the year was it?
This is in March. Yep, 2 years ago. I was there 2 years ago this week. Well, I was there for several weeks. But the weather was really quite nice. I learned the first day when we stopped, I did not, because you're soaking wet, because you've been hiking all day long and you just sweat. I did not change my clothes right away, and about an hour later, I was freezing, because once you stop, you're soaking wet. So I learned when you stop, change your clothes real fast. We don't need to go there. The next morning, we started out, and again, just a humbling sort of thing, straight up through this pass, and you can see there are some people in the middle there. And when we came out at the top, that's what we looked back at. And it was again humbling. You can see there's a little village down in the valley there. We're going to come back down through that village in a little bit. But now we're on the final stretch heading to Everest Base Camp. And interestingly, a good stretch of it was kind of like a giant dirt road for a couple of miles. Dry, dusty, windy as could be. But still pretty cool. We ended up in a little community of Gorakchep, which on this picture is right here. That's where we were. That's where this picture is from. And that is the last place before Everest Base Camp. So if you're going to get something, you get it here, because there ain't nowhere else to get anything. But that's the whole village right there. And that's been there like this forever, all the way back to Sir Edmund Hillary's time. That is one of the peaks on the way in. That's Pumori. That's about 23,500 feet. But all of a sudden, these things they're that big are just right next to you. That's Nuptse. That is this mountain right here. Obviously not nearly as tall as Everest. Everest is another about 12 miles behind it, but still a quite sizable mountain. And you can see there's a little tiny human being down at the bottom of that picture. That's me. Robert kept doing that thing. Step back a little, step back a little further, a little further. He started out with, go stand over there. And then he just kept moving me back and back and back. But that just gives you some sense of the scale of things. And then that is Mount Everest, the peak in the center. This is as close as we got to it. It's still about 12 miles away. I'll show you in a moment where you could get this view, which would be really something, but it would take you about 4 days to get there. And it's probably only 5 miles away. It's just that rugged. But that's a great shot of Everest. So we are technically at this point in base camp, and there we are. with Nupsi behind us, a really, really ugly sign that people put up for a reason I'll explain to you in 1 second. But everybody hates that sign. It's just this garish thing in the middle of spectacular landscape. And about 3 days after we were there, a bunch of people tore it down, and it's not there anymore. They felt it was a bit of a desecration. The reason they did it, this is the traditional Everest Base Camp shot that everybody gets. You sit on that rock and you have your picture taken, and you can see the other mountains around you. The reason they put up the sign is because you can see some idiots brought spray paint and started writing graffiti on the rock at the base of Mount Everest. I mean, I don't understand how anybody could even conceive of doing something like that. That's why they had the sign, but the sign's no longer there. And that's myself and my crew on the traditional Everest Base Camp picture. This is an actual picture of Base Camp. Those yellow tents, and most of the tents in Base Camp are yellow for some reason, high visibility, I guess. This is right before the season. The season starts a week after we were there, and I'm going to show you a second picture. But if you wanted to go to Everest, you would follow that glacier down, around, and you'd go up between those mountains, and Everest is actually behind there. But from here to summit Everest is 2 months, because you have to acclimatize. It's extreme altitude, obviously. It's extreme risk, extreme angles. And on this side of the mountain, there are too many people up there, so they slow you down. But that's base camp when we were there. This is base camp 1 week later. About 4,000 people have moved in, and they are all there to climb Everest. And this is where everybody leaves from. So we got to see it. We went down. We did all the traditional things. I didn't know this. For guys, when you reach Everest Base Camp, you take off your shirt and you walk around and smoke a cigarette. Why? I have no idea, but that is a tradition. So I did not partake in that tradition. But all the boys did. And all the other people there. It was really kind of hilarious. So we had made it. We did what we set out to do. Now we just have 7 days of hiking back. So we went back to Gorakshep and stayed in our, went and had a little snack in our tea hut. And I'm going to show you some more of that in a minute. And you'll see another picture where you'll see what I'm talking about. This is a famous, famous tea house. Everybody who climbs Everest has been through there. They all stay there. There's graffiti everywhere. There's money from around the world. There are flags. There are pictures. So Robert and I had spare passport pictures, so we stuck them in a little crack there and left them so people would know we were there. And then the next day we started out. And I just thought that was kind of a cool picture with the light and the angle, and Jack and Robert. So I'm going to shift now to a couple of more specific things, starting with tea houses, but I'll show you the rest of the way out from here. So we stayed in tea houses, which are lovely accommodations, but no heat, no hot water. You are sheltered. There's one room, that's the dining room, that will be heated for about 4 hours at night by burning yak dung. So you don't want to breathe real deeply if the fire's not burning smoothly. But we stayed in, that's a picture of one, and then here's a full picture of it. It's pretty darn nice, you know, but I'm going to show you the room in a second. But really, again, nice accommodations, wonderful people, good food, hot drinks, everything you could ask for. It's just a little Spartan. There's my room. I would say this is the nicest room I had for 2 reasons. One, you can see I have electricity. Not all rooms have electricity, so I was able to charge things until about 9 at night when the batteries that have been charged all day by solar wear out. But that's my room. That's probably the nicest room I had. And it was a luxury room because these are the 2 types of bathrooms you get. The one with the commode and a sink, that is the height of luxury at a tea house. No cold water, no hot water. And so that's the luxury. The one on the left is the more traditional. That is called a squatty potty. and you hope that the door that you close behind yourself has a handle on it so you can hold on to it and don't fall down. But those are the two varieties of bathrooms you get. One important double lesson: you do not drink the water at all, period. Don't even brush your teeth with it, which is a hard thing to do. So you can see I would take my cup, put distilled water and my toothbrush in it to remind myself not to drink the water at all. And the second rule is don't eat meat. If you're in Kathmandu, you can eat meat. Outside of Kathmandu, do not eat meat. You have no idea what it is, how it was slaughtered, how it was cared for after it was slaughtered. There is no refrigeration. So the safe way to go is just don't eat the meat, which we didn't. I have talked to other people who thought, oh, I'll be okay, and did, and they all got sick. So that's the bad side of the tea house, which is actually fairly nice. This is inside a tea house. This is a very typical one. This is the group of us having breakfast in the morning. They always have in the back, you can see a person at a counter. They have a little store. You can get things you want. The further you go, the bottle of water that on day 1 is $8, by day 7 is $14, because somebody had to carry it in there. But that's us at breakfast. I'm going to come back to food in a little bit, but that's a very typical tea house, and all the tables are around a square, and in the middle is the wood stove. This is the tea house in Garakship that I was talking about, that has flags and banners and money and everything from all over the world. And we got a special treat when we got back that day. Rob is eating popcorn, which was, we just hadn't had anything like that in 10 days at this point, or 9 days. But that's a great little shot of a tea house. It's smoky in there because the fire wasn't burning well. And about 10 minutes after this, we realized, oh yeah, that's yak dung they're burning. So we're breathing that. So that's when we went out and took the picture by Noopsy. We got out of there till the air got clear and they got the fire going. We took a little detour on the way back and went to Port Shea. We went to Port Shea because this place has a direct link to Ruston, Louisiana, and to Jane Watts and Hollis Downs. Port Shea is a project. It's a famous mountaineering guy named Alex Lowe and his wife Jenny. Alex was killed in an avalanche climbing Everest. His partner who was with him, Conrad Anker, who later married his friend's widow, but it was all cool. They were happy about it. But Conrad is an incredible believer and a supporter of the Sherpa people. Without Sherpas, there is no Everest, really. But the Sherpas have never had a training facility. They've never been provided the best safety equipment. They've never been taught technique from professional mountaineers. They just learn what they learned along the way. So this is a building, the first building ever built solely and dedicated to the Sherpa people, and it's a training center. It's called the Khumbu Ice Center, and they are literally, they just a week ago, because I saw a picture of Conrad coming back, finished up the season of training. So they put Sherpas through there and train them how to be super safe and how to use everything properly. And for this effort, the Sherpa people, Conrad Anker is a god to them. But it's a really respectful thing. But when you go inside, and they opened the place up for us because we were a special guest. When you go inside, a little dedication plaque there, that's Robert just fooling around on a little rock climbing wall. And on the list you'll see there, the 7th name down is Ross Lynn. That's Hollis Downs' nephew, Jane Watts' son. He was killed in a farming accident over in Shreveport years back, but he was a big mountaineer. He was friends with some of the most famous people in the business. And that is the Ross Lynn climbing wall. That wall is named for Ross Lynn. So a very direct tie to Ruston. And that's why we went there. And when I came back and I did this show the first time, Jane was going to come, and she wasn't able to at the last minute. And so the next day, I just pulled a bunch of pictures and sent them to her I didn't realize she'd never been there. I thought surely she had been, and I sent them to her, and 30 seconds later the phone rang, and she was in tears. And she just had never seen this, so it made it very special. It made it well worth the effort to go there. Remember that little sign, because we're going to come back to it. Not the one with all the names, but the Kumbu Climbing Center. I'm going to come back to that in just a second.
What kind of phone were you using?
What kind of phone?
Your cell phone?
Yep, worked the whole time.
So they have service, cell service?
Yep.
Wow.
You'd hit little pockets where you couldn't, but remember, we're way up at altitude. We're at 17,000 feet. There's not much blocking anything. But it was pretty amazing. A cell phone works from the top of Everest. Yep. I just thought this was a neat picture on our way out. Gives you a sense of both the size and the scope and the rugged nature of the landscape. So there we are. We're heading back now. We've only got 6 more days to go. This is probably my favorite picture because it's my son, and I like to take pictures of the artist at work. That's him. He's taking a picture of Ama de Blam, and this is actually a famous promontory. And that's the picture he's taking, which I think is pretty dramatic and cool, particularly in black and white. But that's, that's sort of the end of that section. I'm going to talk a little bit about food, because everybody wonders, what did you eat and how was it? All along the way, there are little riverside lodges and restaurants. It's not this Spartan thing. The menu is about 6 items, but that's it. But we stayed got to have lunch in these lovely little places. So we came to refer to breakfast as round and brown. You could pretty much get what you wanted, but it was all round because it was cooked in a frying pan, and it was all brown because it just got well done. But you can see we had eggs and hash, sometimes sausage, pancakes, all you want of breakfast foods. I should mention, so we went, we had a guide, 3 porters, accommodations every night, 3 meals a day, 4 nights in a hotel, including meals at the hotel, all in cost $2,500 and $500 to tip the porters. That's all it was. It's just crazy. This is a typical lunch place. That's us sitting at the table there. And then, that's a pretty nice backdrop for, a lunch in the middle of a hike.
The sign was in English, so is that
Yeah.
language most spoken?
Yep. You hear languages from around the world. But English is, for signage, English is a very common language. There's Nepali language as well. But most things have English. And the menus all have English. So that's my crew. They're drinking mint tea, and Rob has ginger lemonade. That's all from plants that are grown right there at the restaurant. I learned to drink black coffee. I haven't drank too much of it since I got back, but I had to. But we drank a lot of coffee and a lot of mint tea. It'll get you through a lot of things. The most popular or populous food item is called dal bhat. It is what the Nepalis, and particularly the Sherpas, swear by, and their phrase is dal bhat power 24 hours. If you eat dal bhat 3 meals a day, you can go for 24 hours a day. I don't quite believe it, but and I haven't had dal bhat in 2 years because you can get whatever you want on the menu, but you can get all you want of dal bhat, and it's no extra cost. But it's basically a ball of rice. To the right, the gray matter there is lentils in some sort of a sauce. Left. Right. No, it's to the right. It's to my left. Okay. Anyway, that one. It's lentils that have just been boiled. Sometimes it has a little seasoning and a little flavoring. Sometimes it doesn't. And then you'll have, excuse me, we'll have curried potatoes, greens, some kind of carrots, and a little crispy bread. And you basically dump the rice in the middle of the plate, pour everything else on it, and everybody just dives in. I ate a lot of noodles and ramen. I was very happy that they had those. But those were the staples for dinner. One place we went, we got apple pie. They had it on the menu, and I asked for it. The guy said, yeah, I guess we can do that. And I watched him. He went over and took 2 apples off the counter. They went back, peeled them, ground fresh cinnamon on them, and made us these fried pies. And my guys were not sure they wanted to try them, but I made them try them, and then we ordered 6 more. We wiped them out on apples. I apologize, this pollen has just really got to me when I talk for a little while. We talked about Conrad Anchor a second ago, and I reminded you of that sign at the Port Chay facility. While we were in Namche, the boys all went down into town just because they wanted to see what Namche was like. I was not going downhill another mile to come back up another mile after having been up the mile already once. While they were down there, Robert called me. That's too big to put in my mouth. We'll see. He says, you're not going to believe. He said, something really cool happened, but you're going to be really disappointed. He ran into Conrad Anchor. That's the most famous guy in mountaineering in the world right now. And Rob ran into him on the street, and Conrad recognized Robert because he had on the Alpenglow Expeditions jacket, and Conrad does work for Robert's company. So he got to meet who for me is probably one of the coolest guys on earth, and I'm sitting up there, you know, doing nothing. Anyway, they hung out together, had a cigarette, cup of coffee, and anyway, he got to meet Conrad. It was pretty cool. He was on his way back from the Port Chay Ice Climbing Center. My favorite person I met, my first Sherpa, is a guy named Lakpa Sonam Sherpa. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And I mean, is there character in that face or what? He was just a cool guy. He was deaf because he had been beaten so severely by his father when he was young. And he was a mountaineering guide. He summited Everest 7 or 8 times, but he eventually went deaf, so he had to change his whole career. So he taught himself construction, design, and photography. And we got talking. I went down. I was the first one down in the warm room that evening. And we got talking, and the way we talked is he could understand what I was saying, a little bit of lip reading, but much easier. I just wrote down whatever I wanted, but he could talk back to me pretty well. It was really quite interesting. Anyway, we just bonded. And the next day he said, I'm going to take you to see Everest again. So we went to a museum just about a half mile up from his place that he built himself by hand. And that statue, you can see the 2 of us there. That's a terrible picture of me. I look weird and skinny, but I was pretty thin. But that statue behind him with the white cape around it, that's a statue to Tenzing Norgay, who was Edmund Hillary's guide and the first Sherpa to summit Everest. Very famous guy, and this museum is a tribute to him. Sonam, everything that he does is to protect and preserve the Sherpa people. And if it hadn't been cloudy, we would have seen Everest right behind Tenzing lifted up axe, but we didn't. But we just had an incredible time. Fascinating man. We got back, and I was complimenting him because in the main room all around were all these pictures like this. And it was I saw them all over Nepal, but he had the biggest collection of any of them I'd ever seen. And I said, these are fascinating. I love photography, and this is so interesting. And he said, oh, I'm so happy that you like my work. He's the guy he is the most famous photographer in all of Nepal. He has won the highest civilian honors for his work, for the Sherpa people, for his photography. He's known all around the world. So I said, can we buy a picture from you? He's like, oh, of course. I said, but I have to warn you, they cost $15. It's like, we'll take 5, please. So that is him at the table signing this print right here. So that's my favorite little token from there. That was my first Sherpa. My second Sherpa was Denaru, who is famous Sherpa. I finally realized after a little while. I said to him, he saw me looking at the list of people, and he said, why are you so interested in that? And I said, well, this young man here, Ross Lynn, is from my hometown. We struck up a conversation, and he asked me if I knew Conrad Anker, and I said, I've never met him. I just missed him 3 days ago, but I know who he is. And he said, oh, I climbed some with Mr. Anker. And I said, oh, really? I said, Everest? He said, 12 times. And I said, named other mountains. He's climbed everything there is, like, you know, all these times. Humble guy. Now he runs the center. It was really cool. You can see we're sitting there. Our hands are bare. I am freezing. We've been in this building that has no heat for about 4 hours now. We went to part company, and I reached out and shook his hand. His hand was as warm as toast. He had not had gloves on or anything. But again, the Sherpa people are just built differently. But just a wonderful guy. These are a couple of my favorites. Those are just some women we met on a trail, and Rob took their portraits. I think they're related. I think they kind of look alike. But I just thought, to me, that's like out of a National Geographic magazine. Don't know their names. We had, as I told you, we had a porter and 3 guides, a guide and 3 porters. That guy in the orange, that's Kailash. They're all related. The porters are his 3 cousins, and they all work together. And when they are not doing this, they're subsistence farmers, about 3 days hike from the Lukla airport. But Kailash was the kindest, warmest, nicest guy you could ever imagine. He had clearly been told by my son and maybe the other guys to take care of me because I'm an old guy, I'm 68. We had so much fun and everything. And one day he actually said, you need to slow down, you're going too fast. And I said, no, I'm not gonna be the one lagging behind the 26-year-olds. But anyway, these are our guys. Rob took these pictures, which I think are neat portraits. BJ carried my stuff all the time. And when we got back to Lukla, we were finally decided we would have a beer. We didn't drink anything at all during the hike. It was not advised. I wanted BJ to come just sit with me, and I was going to buy him a beer. I said, no, you're the guests. We don't do that. We never ate with them. We never socialized with them. They do their own thing, and they only eat after we're all taken care of. And I kept saying to BJ, I just want to say thank you. And he said, no. Thank you. Thank you for coming to Nepal and giving us a chance to earn some money. It was just very, very humbling. Wonderful guys. You hear stories about porters and Sherpas being able to carry things. This is a few examples. I don't know what that is. I don't care what it is. I don't want to carry anything that big. And then you've got the one in the middle carrying that load across the bridge, which means you're not using your hands, so you've got a double balance thing there. And that pile of goods is, 8 feet above the person's head. Don't know what's in the white bags, but again, I don't want to carry that much of anything. This black and white is taken in black and white on purpose. That's Ahmad Dablan behind it. But we thought this was a body. It turned out to be a young Nepali girl who was very, very sick. They were afraid she was going to die, and they were taking her out. She couldn't afford to be helicoptered out. It's $5,000 to get a chopper to come and get you. She couldn't afford that. So those 4 guys right there carried that litter with her on it for 6 days. They carried her out of there and saved her life. We found out later she survived. She's okay. But pretty amazing.
Where did they take her, John?
Back to Lukla, to the airport, where we had medical services. Animals. Everything moves by animals. That's a donkey there carrying propane. Lots of propane tanks carried around by donkeys. So we had donkeys, and this is on the trail, and this is I took that picture, they're 2 feet away from me. We had yaks. Yaks are the workhorses, and they vary in size, they vary in color, they vary in temperament. They can apparently be quite nasty if they get riled up. And the fella on the with the black yak You can see he's got a little switch. That's all they use to control the animals. They have a little tiny switch. They talk to them. They have commands, and they'll just tap them with the little. Yeah, nobody's cruel to any animals. They're too dependent on them. Horses. The horses are little. This one, I know, a woman was having a hard time on the trail, so she rode that horse to base camp. And then obviously he came back without her. The picture on the other side, I'm not going to try to get directions straight. Those yellow packs, that's an expedition. All those, you can see there's a whole trail of them. This expedition was going in to set up base camp, and that's all their gear. There were probably 40 horses of gear and porters carrying things, and they'll all go in and set up camp, and about a week later the actual hikers will show up. So we were literally, as we were coming out, the expedition people were going in. So we got back to Lukla, supposed to fly out that afternoon, bad weather, can't fly out, but you'll be on the first plane in the morning. So the morning comes around, we don't hear any planes at all. We go out, it's all totally socked in. They say, give it a couple hours, you'll be there on the first plane. A couple hours goes by, it clears up a little bit. We are not on the first plane. 2 planes go out, and then they're closed down again, and we're stuck. So now we're a full day there already, stuck for a second day, and I said, I heard there was a possibility of getting a chopper. So we talked to Kailash. He went and made a phone call, and fortunately we had good connections. Our main folks were very well connected, and we were able to get a chopper. But the chopper couldn't come in to Lukla because it was too socked in. But they could come in. They could come in about a 2.5-hour hike below where we were. So now we're dressed like I'm dressed because we think we're getting on a plane and going home. We've let the porters go, but we got to hike about 2.5 hours downhill with all the gear, and we're not prepared. So we just all whipped our clothes off on the tarmac, changed into our hiking gear, threw the bags on, and off we went. I call it the escape because it was our only way out. Trail wasn't too bad, but it started raining. So that trail that looks okay there becomes slick with mud and everything else that the animals leave. So it was a rugged hike down. Probably the steepest, hardest part of the entire trip. We eventually came out in this field, which of course has a temple, because anywhere there are people, they have a temple. Lovely little spot. About 300 people waiting for planes and trains and whatever might else come to get them. We got very lucky. About 10 minutes after we got there, here comes our chopper. So they've got a load they're bringing in. They've just kicked all the guys out, thrown their gear out. That's our gear going back in. That's Rob and Tanner. They touch down, never shut the engine off. 5 guys jump out, throw their stuff out, throw our stuff in. That chopper was not on the ground 4 minutes, and we were all loaded up. Oh, here we go. That's us in the chopper. You can see me way over, stuck in the corner. They were going to put me, the old guy, up front, but our friend Tanner had never been in a helicopter in his life. So I said, you got to put Tanner up front. Well, it's one of the little bubble front ones. You're just out there. His eyes were like this. And, you know, you take off and you're dropping down and things and you're coming up. It was a pretty wild ride. But I think it was pretty exciting for Tanner. They could not take us back to Kathmandu because there's too much air traffic in the afternoon, so little planes don't get to come in there. So they took us to an airport 60 miles away from Kathmandu. You can see we got back on the ground there. But then now we're 60 miles from Kathmandu. It takes 6 hours to go 60 miles. you can't go more than about 10 miles an hour because the roads are so bad and so steep and so full of potholes.
What
So-
were you on? What were you traveling?
They picked us up in a van. Yep.
All right, so it's Sunday, March 24th. I'm here with my dad at, where are we?
Base camp on Mount Everest.
And how old are you?
I am 68 years old, and I've been looking at this mountain in pictures since I was 7 years old, and here we are.
And how long have you been training?
I started training on April Fool's Day a year ago.
Inappropriate.
It was hard as hell, and I want to say a big shout out to Lynette Talbot and Billy Goat Swift for pushing my 68-year-old ass.
Pardon me.
I feel awesome. We're at 17.4, no altitude issues. I feel strong. I had meniscus surgery 8 weeks ago, and I am here.
You're here.
I am here.
I gotta say, Dad, I'm pretty proud of you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for making this an incredibly special trip.
All right, so you can see about 90 miles of hiking, about 48,000 feet of up and down, 6-hour drive back to Kathmandu. Everybody lost 14 pounds, a pound a day. So that was it. We got back to Kathmandu, had dinner with our guiding company folks, and over the course of conversation, they were telling us about the next group that was coming in, some high school kids who were going to go do some trekking, but they were also on a little bit of a mission trip, and then we're going to go to a small village and build a goat pen for the people in the village. And our guide's wife said, I hope when we get done, we might have enough money to get them a goat. So I thought about it for a few minutes, and I talked to Rob, and I asked her, I said, what's a goat cost? And she said, I don't know. You know, like, maybe $100? I had one $100 bill left in my wallet. So I took it out and I gave it to her, and I said, buy them a goat if you can. She sent me this 2 weeks later. Robert and baby John. I'm the little guy. They built the goat pen. They were able to buy not one goat, but two, and the larger goat is pregnant. And they've since had a baby. So they got 3 goats for $100. So that's what Robert and I left behind in Nepal. And that's it.
You said the porters, when they weren't boarding, they were farmers. What did they grow?
Whatever they could grow in the rocky soil, mostly greens and corn.
So they didn't have the snow there.
Not where they were.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was going to tell you, so we asked our lead folks, how much should we tip the guide, Kailash? And he stopped saying, he said, 300. And we said, okay, so $300 a piece. He said, oh, no, $300. This guy guided us through everything for 14 days, took care of us, and he was getting a salary, but it's not much. But the tip was $300. He said, that's plenty. We gave him $600. And they told us for the porters, $100 for 14 days of carrying our stuff. We gave them $200 each. Anyway, it was a very cool experience. Any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. David, I see you smiling. You've got a comment. Most of that's mine. No, I'm joking. No. I do want to give credit. That's a good point. Thank you. This is an easy story to tell because the pictures are, I think, so cool and so different. And most of those were taken by Robert. Some of them are mine. But this is what Rob does. And he just completed his first really full expedition. He just climbed Aconcagua down in Argentina, which is 23,000 feet. It's the highest mountain he's climbed, and he was the official photographer and videographer for the expedition for his company. He's actually making a living as a mountaineer, which is a pretty unusual thing to be able to do. But that's a good point. I should give credit where credit is due. So, any questions at all? Thank you all so much for coming here this evening. I greatly appreciate it. I hope You heard and saw some interesting things. It was quite an experience, and especially special to get to do it with my son. So.
Were you constrained by daylight?
I'm sorry?
Were you constrained at all by daylight for hiking?
No, no. You know, we were up at the crack of dawn. We were up. If we slept till 6, that was late. But we were in bed at 8:30. So we were not interested. Once it got dark, we wanted to go to sleep. Yeah. But we had full days. Full days. It was daylight at 6 and sunset at 7:30 in the evening. So kind of like about right now. Huh. Yep. And it was cold at times. Like I said, it was below 0 some mornings, but not bad. You know, you warm up pretty quick. 12 days without a shower is a lot, I'll tell you that. So, thank you all so much.